Hello, good night, and welcome to Mindful Live 392. I'm your host, Nathan Springer, maybe your co-host on some days. The host is right there in the background, allowing her presence to be heard. You know, just in case you all were wondering where she might be, she's ad-libbing. You know, making sure that all that empty vocal space in the background is well filled. It's a skill and a talent, really and truly. So once you are on the inside, make sure you hit that like button, double tap the screen over there on TikTok. If you are wondering, if you are wondering how to hit that like button over there on TikTok, that's what you do. You double tap the screen as quickly as you can, hit that 2 taps and get it going. Allow the algorithm to know this is some good stuff. If you are looking at this over on YouTube, I'm streaming live also on YouTube. We stream live on YouTube, and the lives are there for you to catch and repeat in case you miss it. You miss one of the lives, you can catch it again when it swings back around. Well, whenever you feel to watch it again on YouTube there. Make sure you subscribe to Nathan Springer over there on YouTube. Click that subscribe button, hit that like button, leave a comment if you have something to say when you're reviewing this video. The last couple of these, we've been uploading them onto at least Spotify as the podcasting platform, and you know, trying to make sure we get them out to Apple eventually also. So good day to the podcast listeners, whoever of you may be out there looking for the Mindful Live podcast out there. We're on Spotify. If you want to, you know, just take it in on the move, you can take it in over there. Alright, so what are we talking about this evening? What is in the news? Starting off this evening, the first thing I'm talking about, the first thing I noticed, or not noticed really actually, because I noticed it a while ago, but just the first story coming up today as we talk about news, politics and culture and all that good stuff, is we're expecting some improvements to our zoo. New multi-million-dollar building for zoo. In a drive to attract more visitors and investors to the Emperor Valley Zoo, the Urban Development Corporation, UDECOT, is undertaking a $56 million improvement of the 7.2-acre facility, which is located north of Queen's Park, Savannah, and west of the Botanical Gardens. On its website last week, UDECOT said the cabinet issued a mandate to UDECOT for improvement and expansion works at the Emperor Valley Zoo. Part of the zoo expansion and improvement project is the construction of a 2-story building with a floor area of 8,550 square feet. The structure is to be called the Discovery Building, the construction of which is underway. The footprint of the building was designed in the shape of a butterfly and consists of an exhibition center, cinema/theater. Okay, I wonder who is going to be running the cinema inside of the zoo. Restaurant, ice cream parlor, Cutter's Bar, okay, conference meeting room, offices, information center, shops, kiosks, and outdoor dining, amphitheater, and children's play area, UDECOT said. The completion is due for the first quarter of 2025. Blessings Arab says, blessings from the island where Wassa does never answer their phone. Aaron also says this doesn't sound like a bad idea. And you know, I saw someone commenting on this and saying, well, it was one of those people who hated zoos in the first place. And if you hate zoos in the first place, well, I don't know what to tell you. That's a tough place to be in. I'm not a vegan. I'm very okay with being on top of the food chain. But my problem is with where the zoo is located in the first place. The zoo is located north of the Queen's Park Savannah, which is the home for many loud festivities throughout the year. I am wondering to myself here, wouldn't it be a better exercise to move the zoo in totality? Like, Why are we upgrading the zoo that is located in possibly the worst spot you could put a zoo in Trinidad and Tobago? Why don't we move the zoo? I mean, if we're looking to really diversify, I would think moving the zoo sets it up for expansion really and truly. Because it could seem some of what they are offering here is by default what you have to offer because you occupy a location inside of the city center. You're putting offices inside of the zoo. That works because the zoo is where offices are supposed to be. Greetings, sir. I would think a better idea, and I mean, maybe I am a fool. Maybe I just don't understand how these things go. But thinking in my simple understanding, we know there are logistical problems with where the zoo is located. Personally, I like Independence fireworks. It's one of the few things, it seems, in this country that is still family oriented and engineered with the hope of uniting people around a family based activity. So I don't have a problem with the fireworks. But I understand that the fireworks are traumatic for the animals. And I mean, if we decide to take up the animals from wherever we take them up from, and we put them inside a cage, it would make sense that we don't put the cage right where we're going to blow up explosions every year. RL says too much bureaucracy and probably a long decision-making process in moving the zoo might take decades. Well, I would have hoped that at some point in the 90s they would have started, so the decades would have finished by now. And I understand what you're saying, and I have no doubt that there would be a lot of bureaucracy. I have no doubt about that. But to me, I could see how easy this should be. The government owns all of the state land. There's state land all over the country. You're telling me you can't go into Grand Couva, somewhere in the middle of Trinidad and Tobago, where there are already several estates with that flavor, and add a zoo there? You help to decentralize the thing. So, you know, when people want to go to the zoo, they don't have to go through rush hour traffic to go to the zoo. Wouldn't that make more sense? Where, you know, the zoo has the possibility of expanding by acres. Like, if the zoo wants to really expand, like we're talking about build really large pens for some other kind of animals, the zoo, in order to purchase land around the zoo, they need to go out there and purchase $1 million properties. They're looking to purchase what do they call that hill where people go and run, and Lara's home and all of that is up there. That's the extra land they have to purchase if they really want to expand. Or Zadiklet. Like, I don't mind the zoo expanding. I like the zoo. I like going to the zoo. It's interesting. But practically, is that the best idea? If we're going to spend money on the zoo with intention of increasing the future sustainability, with intention of diversifying the economy, encouraging tourism, there's where we'd encourage tourism. Because, like, even if you're looking to bring in ecotourism, people who are generally interested in ecotourism are people who are interested in the well-being of animals. And from the time people hear the background of this zoo is located in the middle of the city, all of the loud activities going around the zoo, many of these animals are traumatized, etc., etc., etc. All of those tree-hugging ecotourists that you may get, all of a sudden they may be wanting to boycott you. Yes, he did, as far as I could recall, sir. but nothing came of it. So, a bigger zoo in the same terribly located place. How does that benefit? Who does that benefit? You know, I really sometimes feel like we never left the colonial era where, you know, as a colonial power, you develop the main city, because when your colonial bigwigs come down to this puny little colony, they're only going to visit Port of Spain anyway. So you need the zoo to be in Port of Spain. You need the performing arts centers to be in Port of Spain. You need all the best facilities to be in Port of Spain, because that's where all of the important people go. And it's kind of sad that 60 years on, and it seems like we're still behaving like that. We're a small country. We don't need that kind of centralizing of state infrastructure. It might be that it's a site for cruise ship tourists. You know, the thing is, RL, the thing is, Trinidad is not so large that a zoo in Central would be prohibitively far for a cruise ship visit. Good night, Sea Sky Nature. Central is not that kind of, Trinidad is not that kind of large. I don't think that a zoo in Port of Spain makes it so much more possible than a zoo in Central. All land is owned by the Queen unless you have a allodial title. Do you know that? It's not owned by the Queen anymore. That land was passed on to the state. It is state land. But land that was given from the Queen and gifted, because there's still, what do they call that land? There's a name for it. Some people have land that they basically got from the Queen. So no, the Queen no longer owns the land in Trinidad. It is owned by the state. And the land, Crown lands, correct. It's Crown lands, correct. And our laws are actually very strange in that it's basically impossible for you to own privately the land. It's nearly impossible. You could lease the land from the state, but for it to be yours is actually very difficult. It doesn't really happen. Who has to pay royalty? The state pays royalty to the Queen? No, that does not happen. That's not the case. All right, jumping into another story there. Revisiting a bit of that Tobago story. And looking at the consequences of lax policing. This is what happens when the police lose control. You see, I've heard many people highlight this, that law enforcement, a lot of what law enforcement is about and the purpose of it is to prevent people from taking justice in their own way. Because the truth is, even without a justice system, without law enforcement, human beings have an innate sense of justice that they are going to seek out for themselves. And the idea of law enforcement and the judicial system and the courts and all of that is that we give up that feeling of going to find justice all on our own, give it up to a system so that we could all live much more orderly and harmoniously together. There's a problem though. When the system starts to look like justice is impossible. Relatives vow revenge for Tobago woman's killing as police urge restraint. A Plymouth woman became Tobago's 8th murder victim after she was cornered and shot early yesterday morning. That would be. Police told Guardian Media that Nikisha Sandy was walking along Annisvale Road in Plymouth around 6 a.m. Lad. 6 a.m. shootings, man. First thing in the morning, like, I wonder, did you wake up early to go murder a mother? Or is it that you didn't sleep all night sitting or lying in wait to murder a mother? Neither of those is really a good one. And I don't want to be you when all of that sowing swings back into the harvesting time. 6 a.m. when 2 gunmen approached her and shot her multiple times. A DMO pronounced her dead on the scene and ordered the body removed to the Scarborough General Hospital mortuary for a post-mortem. Sandy is the second woman to have been shot dead in less than 2 weeks in Tobago. On May 4th, Shalon Walters Joseph was found dead over a precipice. Her car then used in a drive-by shooting in Speyside. This morning, emotions ran high and tempers flared among relatives and villagers who vowed a kill for a kill as crime scene investigators processed the scene. One relative said what they feel, we have nobody over. I going to buy big guns too. Big guns I'm going to buy. That is what they want. That is what they're going to get. What they want, they will get. Hello, Draco7. Sea-Sky Nature says, so if the land is gifted, why we must go to Privy Council for judgment on certain crimes? That's a choice we have, Sea-Sky Nature. We choose to keep ourselves subject to the Privy Council as our highest court of the land. And there are many reasons why that is. You have to understand that how governance works on a whole, and I know we're sidetracked from murder in Tobago here. Oh, shit. But we have to understand the idea of governance. The idea of governance is many countries over thousands of years have sought to figure out how to balance the avenues of power, the corridors of power, so that all the power doesn't get concentrated in fewer people's hands and they aren't able to abuse it on the general population. So one of the main ways we do it all around the Western world is by having various branches of government, and they're all kind of subject to each other in a way. So you have the executive branches, that's the prime minister or executive president, the ruling leadership, but they technically aren't supposed to be able to do anything that the legislature doesn't give them permission to do. The legislature being the wider voted for group of people, the parliament, the house, the congress. So the legislature is supposed to keep the executive branch in check. So the executive branch is not supposed to just have unlimited power to run over the country. But if there's a discrepancy now between what the legislative branch said or what the executive branch is doing, we're supposed to have the judicial branch to rectify all of these issues, to answer the hard pressing questions. Now there are some problems with this judicial branch, because the legislative branch, members of the legislative branch, are supposed to fall underneath the power of the judicial branch. The members of the executive branch are supposed to fall underneath the judicial branch. But the judicial branch in itself doesn't actually have a whole heaping lot of power. When Justice Lucky or Sipasad or one of them pound their gavel and make a statement, they don't have an army to enforce it. It works on trust. So you need to have an institution that a large enough majority of your population already trusts. Otherwise, when a ruling is made, it's like if a random piper, a random hustler in your village put on a robe and put on a wig and go on the corner and make a ruling. Nobody's going to take him seriously, and you don't want your actual courts of the land to work like that. That's why, there's pomp and circumstance around the court. You're trying to make sure that the population retains that level of trust in that institution. And one of the ways to do that, especially if you are a newly independent country, is to remain under the highest court that has basically overseen the style of constitution that we are using. We are using basically a constitution drafted in line with the British Constitution. So it would make sense, if we want people to trust the courts, that the highest court, the court that ultimately answers any question that we cannot answer inside of our judicial system, is a court that rules over the country that started this constitution. I understand the reasoning. Now, don't get me wrong, as it comes down the road 60 years, I could understand where you're coming from, Trini Hotep, on why I could feel like we should get rid of it too. I think there are certain things that the Privy Council hamstrings us with. I don't think, for example, the option we regularly talk about looking at our Central American neighbors, El Salvador, I don't think we have the ability to do what El Salvador did, because we don't have the highest court of the land within our borders. So there are some difficulties, but that's why. There's a reason why, and it's not because the Queen still owns the land. But back to Tobago and residents and family members on the scene of the murder saying that we are going to take revenge and I'm going to get my hands on big guns. And in frustration, that conclusion is the logical one. It is the logical conclusion in frustration. If I think like the justice system that presents itself to me, good night Wendy Medium XL, will not give me justice, that these law enforcement officers are not going to get the people that hurt my family. On a just face level logic, doesn't it make sense that I go and fix this myself? And ultimately, this is the problem when police don't do their jobs properly. This is what happens, and this is what is going to be encouraged. And at some point in time, you would be a wicked person to attempt overly to discourage people from this. If it is that the police are not doing their jobs and crime is running rampant, how are you to really look at a family and tell them, wait for justice? From who? And why wouldn't the family seek to get that justice all on their own, by their own means? Chief Secretary wants special police units in Tobago. The Tobago House of Assembly is working with the Ministry of National Security to boost police presence on the island. This was revealed by the Chief Secretary as he expressed condolences to the family of murder victim Nikisha Sandy. One of the things they said to me as I recall part of that conversation, this is not Tobago. We don't want any other family to experience the pain we feel now. This is not the Tobago that we know. And where are these guns coming from? He said guns are not manufactured in Tobago, nor in Trinidad, as he bemoaned the country's porous border. Thean says where I'm from had shootings for 2 days. They only came when someone got murdered. Well, that's another thing that sometimes if you're not in the know, you might not know that in Trinidad and Tobago. That okay, you might hear about 2 murders per day. But that's not all the shootings there are. There are many more shootings than there are murders. Consider that for a bit. Like, there was a shooting where I read they shot at the guy in St. James, the notorious one in St. James, who made himself popular with a lot of videos out there. I read that there was an attempt on his life. Somebody chased him down with a rifle, but apparently they weren't very straight. Good night, Friday Forever. Now, that story would make the news because he is a known figure. That's why it would make the news. But many such instances occur that just don't make the news. Somebody attempted to kill somebody, fired off a couple dozen shots, and no one was murdered, no one was really hurt, so it just doesn't make the news. And more, really and truly, you're going to find people with the Tobago kind of conclusion. And what happens when you have communities that come to that conclusion? What happens if the entirety of Beetham sees it that police are unable to rectify our issues? So we have to deal with this on our own. You could have even good people now feeling much more loyalty to criminals from inside their community than police officers on the outside. Because if something happens to me, I would get quicker redress by asking my local criminal to help me than by asking my local police. And where does that all go? To me, it seems like we're heading in a kind of Haitian direction if you're doing that. Fireflame says, police not on crime, men from Caledonia say they always have it on them. Or the video that was made, well, those videos show you some realities, that there are parts in many communities in Trinidad and Tobago that are laws unto themselves. The police obviously don't go into some of those areas. Those guys aren't worried about the police running in on them. And maybe the chief secretary has the right idea. Maybe if he could somehow work out a more Tobagonian unit of policing, they may be able to get a hold easier on that, because I feel like a community should be able to stop something like that. A community like Tobago should be able to stop something like that. That's not, I don't think that's something that should be too difficult to get a handle on. How many murderers do you think there are? I don't think there are that many murderers. You catch 20 murderers and you may deplete the number of murders by half. I don't think there are more than a couple hundred murderers walking around the country. And when I say murderers, I mean people who are well experienced and willing to commit murder on multiple occasions. Jordan Tech Videos says, I hope things change soon in this country because I can see it getting really bad in terms of crime. Yeah, I could see that too. And that's a comment I regularly make. Like, I am not one who likes to drag down Trinidad and talk like we eating grass and think so hard in Trinidad. I don't think that's true. I think by and large Trinidad has it pretty easy compared to the world. If you look comparatively across the world, Trinidad is not the most difficult place. But the crime situation, legitimately, comparative to anywhere in the world, crime is horrific here. Karim Del Presh over on YouTube says, didn't know you're on Spotify. Great news. Won't that be too much noise for the animals? Well, they don't care, sir. Staying with Tobago news. It could always be worse than once you're alive in a Dean can. Someone could always say it could be worse until you're dead. Staying with Tobago news, Duke, I will not support any coup in the THA. PDP political leader Watson Duke says his party will not support any coup in the Farley-led Tobago House of Assembly at a news conference on May 9th at the PDP's head office. He went on. Duke alleged there were internal rumblings within the administration, which is preventing Augustine from carrying out his planned reshuffle. A newspaper article on May 8th said Augustine was expected to announce a realignment of his administration at the post-executive council meeting briefing later that day, but this did not materialize. On the Tobago Updates morning show on March 13th, Augustine said a date for the reshuffle had been fixed. He also said then that the secretaries and assistant secretaries were aware of the date of the announcement. Augustine said he had met with them individually to inform them of the changes. The chief secretary had first indicated that a reshuffle was coming more than a year ago. Duke said the chief secretary must reshuffle his cabinet or his executive. There are no two ways about it. You will have to bite the bullet and rearrange your secretaries in a way that represents the growth and development of the Tobago executive that you wish to see, he said. I challenge you, chief secretary, to make the difference by rearranging your executive. It is your executive. Do not let their numbers fool you. Duke added, I, Watson Duke, will not stand and watch foolishness take place. And if there is anyone threatening the chief secretary that if he votes them, they will get up and vote him out, I will not support such a vote, and I will work with Tobago to ensure that they don't support such a vote. Here's the thing. I think Duke is attempting to set up Mr. Farley here. I don't know if you all are following exactly what's going on here. So Mr. Farley is saying he has intention to reshuffle his cabinet, basically. It's up to him to reshuffle his assemblymen. But as we were talking about last night, he does not have a very strong party basis to stand on. So the power that he has to give and promise is all in the assembly. Are you going to be able to watch an assemblyman and tell him, well, we are removing you from your position of power here? What do you have to offer him? Why would he take that movement? And Watson Duke is urging him on, saying, Farley, you name man, this is your group. This is your house. You have to rearrange them. And don't let nobody threaten you. I will not stand for that. But I think he is purposefully attempting to throw some spokes in the wheel of the TPP. Because I am not sure the TPP is going to survive a reshuffle. If I am an assemblyman inside of the TPP, and you are looking to move me away from my position of power, why would I remain a member of the TPP? Why would I remain a member of the TPP? So it's nearly like anybody you reshuffle out of positions of power, you are risking losing them. And bear in mind, This is like the problem with, you know, I don't know how many of you have heard the statement, you know, you don't want on your resume to have too many short stints at different jobs because it seems to signal to an employer that you are very disloyal. You know, you don't stay and stick around at any job. At the first glimpse of anything, you are quick to jump out. Well, here's the thing. All of the people that Mr. Farley has following him are people who have already shown that they have no problem switching loyalties. Are you sure that the loyalty is centralized in the TPP? I think Mr. Duke wants them to find out. He wants him to make that reshuffle because Friday Forever says his scandals made the citizens lose respect for him. I don't know, you know. I don't know anyone personally who was a fan of Watson Duke and any of the revelations of late changed their mind about Watson Duke, because I think Watson's character was known for a long time. Like, it's not a surprise who the man is. You know, and I have spoken before about his leaning towards populism, and it's to draw a parallel with the American populist, the Great Orange, Big Orange himself. It's like those people who think that when they release a story with Donald Trump saying that he's going to grab, well, not he's going to grab, but that when you're famous, some women allow you to grab them by the feline, and they think that story is somehow going to hurt him. No, it's not. People know who the guy is. That's not hurting him. He called a woman horse face. They attempted to make a big scene about that, and they asked him about, if you know, don't you feel something about calling women horse face? And he said, I didn't call women, only Rosie O'Donnell. And all of his fans loved it. Those things aren't changing people's view and respect of him. I don't think that's true. I don't think there's much. Listen, Mr. Duke promised us a swim from Tobago to Trinidad, jumped in the water in a wetsuit, and then took a tour and celebrated it as a completed mission. The man is known. We know who we're getting. We know who he is. I don't think many people are surprised about that. When the whole bacchanal blew up with his friend in their party, that wasn't surprising. Friday Forever says it's a flamboyant and show-off behavior doesn't impress you. And here's the thing, I am willing to bet if you are not a Duke fan, you were not a Duke fan all along. If you don't like Watson Duke now, I don't think you liked him 3 years ago. I follow all news, Ross Noren, as much as I could. Yeah, if you don't like him now, you didn't like him then. So, the flamboyant behavior might not impress you, but yeah, it works for some people. It works for some people. Like, I think probably Mr. Duke's major loss of support, wouldn't be his behavior. It would be the fact that he wasn't able to manage the THA runnings and get things done the way he said he was going to. Like, if he was able to be a mover and shaker within the THA, and every Monday morning you're hearing about Duke and you see him on a project somewhere, and lots of talk and lots of ruffling of feathers and that kind of stuff, he would have continued with the kind of support he got. I think the move done by Mr. Farley, where they separated the power and the decision making totally from anywhere near him, that hurt his ability. Not his scandals. His scandals did nothing. I don't think many of his supporters care, really and truly. Yeah, you all forget this man was the man who went and took out all of the union's money from a bank and carried it in a duffel bag walking across Port of Spain downtown. Some millions of dollars. You all don't remember that story? That was while he was union president. I mean, the man is a man known for his theatrics. So, theatrics aren't a shocker when you see them coming from him. It's his thing. I don't know how much support he lost with the antics. Hey, let me go into some judicial news, some news coming out of the courts. And you know, I regularly say this. When you have enough money, and this is the reason that if you read your personality. No, I don't know what that is. Yeah, the if you're talking about the judge, not senior counsel, if you have enough money, the judicial system could almost never catch you, you know. Someone could be found guilty. Everyone knows what they did. Once they have enough money to keep fighting every little sentence of every case, it's like justice would never find them. Ferguson fails again to avoid revealing assets in US case. Businessman Steve Ferguson has been denied a stay of an order to disclose his assets as the state seeks to enforce its US $131.3 million judgment against him, former Finance Minister Brian Quaitang and United States businessman Raul Gutierrez. On May 6, the Florida District Court of Appeal refused Ferguson's motion and lifted the temporary stay. In April, the Miami judge hearing the state's case against Ferguson and the others denied a similar motion. He appealed and received a temporary stay pending the appeal court's ruling. In March, Diaz overruled all of Ferguson's objections to the state's discovery requests and gave him until April 8 to comply with the disclosure orders. Ferguson was also unsuccessful in an injunction application against the state in the local courts. Ferguson has objected to almost every question or request by asserting his right to avoid self-incrimination under the Fifth Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. He sought, amongst other things, orders for the matter to be deemed urgent and for orders prohibiting the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago from pursuing the Florida discovery applications. It also sought to prevent the state from deposing certain witnesses, including his son and daughter who live in Florida, to provide information identifying assets he purportedly owned or held interest in there. So in other words, Big Man is trying his best to make sure that the courts don't know all that he owns and all that is his, because he has already been found guilty. They fought that for years. Finally, it caught up to them. A ruling was made on what they're found guilty for. Now that the ruling was made, they're going to fight that ruling for years. I hope there's interest on that ruling, so that as they're fighting the 100 and how much million we're supposed to get, 131 US million. If they're fighting us and holding us up in court from giving us back that money, I hope there's interest going up on that. So that if you hold it up for 10 years, you get a plus a couple percent on that, because that's kind of ridiculous. But that's the way the judicial system works. Those with money are able to basically delay justice for so long it basically becomes non-existent. do you get justice on someone who could always pay a lawyer to ask a question about everything and appeal every matter about every case? And you know, that's kind of the problem why you need, if you're going to try to rectify things to some extent, that's why you need that ability to go over the Supreme Court even. The El Salvador option, the Bukele option. If you have a court system there, the nature of a court system is, it's nearly, court systems aren't really there engineered to provide justice to a wide system. That's not what they do, because people, from the time their money comes into this, where it's a paid thing, you get money based on this thing, then the idea of justice being all fair and blind there goes out of the window. Talking about justice, y'all, tell me if you all think this is justice, if this is a good improvement in our legal way. What you think about the tint law? I think it's ridiculous, foolish and ridiculous, but normal thing with our government and their policy for road enforcement. That seems to be how they run most things. So I think it's foolish, it's ridiculous, and it's going to hurt a lot of people, but what surprise is there? What surprise is there? And you know, if the PNM government loses elections based on their stupidity on gun laws and their greed and wickedness on road traffic enforcement, they fully well deserve it. And I could see that happening. The UNC can push that point, and I think it will be a winning point, because the people who vote are the people who don't want criminals harassing them on the day-to-day basis. They may be interested in self-defense. The people who vote are the people who drive up and down the roads on a day-to-day basis, who get a bubble every now and again in their tint, who understand that if you start charging me hundreds of dollars for bubbles in my tint, I will not live. If the UNC pushes that point and the PNM continues being their normal, obstinate, arrogant way, a lofty, top-down, we say it so that's the way it goes kind of attitude, they can win, and they probably should. They can lose, and they probably should lose if they continue down that line. And they seem to be running head-on into it. They seem to be running head-on into it. And maybe social media may be a thing that the PNM is not accounting for as much as they should, because as it stands right now on social media, there's nearly no support for the PNM beside PNM superfans. People who were always fans of the PNM and who would vote PNM till they die, even if Rowley personally spit in their eye, they are still superfans. But there aren't many casual observers who are like, these people are doing well for the country. That's not happening. And I don't think it's going to sway in the PNM's favor, the way they are running things. Yep, I heard when she said that. And if you read the comments, the defense that people have, well, obey the laws if you obey the law. And every time I read that, I'm like, well, that's the guy who would have caught you and given you back to the slave master and saying, you know, all your runaway slaves is cause all of you to get licked, so no, stop running away, slave. If you just obey the law, we wouldn't be getting all this licks. Massa, look him running there, massa. That's those people. That's those people. You're hiding and trying to get a little meal in between inside of the slave house, and he run away to go and tell the overseer. He sneak out. He's disobeying the laws. He's disobeying the rules. Like if the rules and the laws are above decency and morality. You're ridiculous. Exactly, Dream Chase, and I always say this. I could now get my inspection sticker and driving down the road and see a roadblock. I'm not driving through that roadblock. I always say this, and the Tobago police are always most confused. They're always most confused, you know. They're like, but why are the citizens selling out the roadblocks? Y'all are helping the criminals. We don't care about the criminals when you're out here taking $1,500 from men for petty offenses. And you're not catching any criminals anyway. Of course, I want to rejoin one of those roadblock groups. I'm no longer in any. If you all know any one of those WhatsApp roadblock groups, link me. I want to know where the roadblocks are because I don't want to drive through them either. Because the chances are, in my inspected vehicle, there's almost surely going to be something that a licensed officer or police could deem of their own choice to be that $1,000. Ridiculous. Dinkan, stop it. You all tell me what you all think of this policy. Judge axes clean-shaven policy. Rules prisons commissioners conduct cannot be condoned in multi-ethnic TNT. A High Court judge yesterday axed a long-standing colonial policy that prison officers must be clean-shaven in Trinidad and Tobago. Justice Margaret Mohammed ruled that it is outrageous that in 2024, the Commissioner of Prisons is still applying this policy, which has the effect of discriminating against prison officers on the basis of race. Kerry Trim says, but all the traffic infractions going on now, you don't think the UNC would continue? I don't know. And I've said that before. What the UNC says from their platform is not an assurance that it's going to happen. But I think the fact that they say it is going to put more pressure on them to keep up with it. And as for it being a possibility, we know. I don't know if you're a long-term driver, how long you have been on the roads of Trinidad and Tobago. If you have been on the roads of Trinidad and Tobago for a long time, we know that this is a new enforcement policy on when it comes to the road infractions, the traffic infractions. We know this is a new level of enforcement. We know that. This hasn't always been the case. And if that is the case, I know some people thought that didn't can. And if that is the case, that it wasn't always like this, that means somebody certainly that is that. That means somebody changed that policy. And somebody can change it back. And here's my question. Somebody changed that policy to this hyperactive over money making policy. But what has been the result since that was done? Have there been less deaths on the road? Well, let me answer that. No. The road carnage has actually been on the rise. Has crime gone down? No. Well, at least there should be no drive-by shootings because they have the roads locked. Well, actually, that's not true. They're doing drive-by shootings and killing four in Grub. They're doing drive-by shootings in Tobago. They're doing roadblocks all about Tobago. And they're doing drive-by shootings in Tobago. Kerry Trim says Jack Warner did that. Well, here's the thing. I don't believe you. That's not true. Jack Warner did do some changes on the road management. But from 2014, I was on the road. This enforcement policy did not exist previous to 2020, very recently actually. This level of enforcement policy is a quite recent thing. I saw that penguin. I saw they shut up a license officer house. a licensing officer had his house shut up. And I mean, on the topic that we're talking about right now, there are many people in this country who have a special hate for licensing officers. Like, you have to understand, you might consider yourself in a uniform doing the job that was assigned to you. That's the way you see it. You see it as, you're in a uniform doing a job assigned to you and doing an honest day's job. But to somebody else, you are the man who took their last $1,500 when they had bills to pay for their children, for rent, and to upkeep the car. I'm not talking about the price, I'm talking about the enforcement character. So, okay, you think you're doing a nice, good law-abiding job, but to the guy, to the individual, you basically were the person who robbed him of his last $1,500. And in a violent country where guns illegally are easy to come by, what solution do you think people are going to come up with if they are being oppressed by licensing officers? Wouldn't it be something if, through government policy, licensing officers become a high threat job like prisons officers? Licensing officers now have to watch their back. Like they want to change their uniform in the office and go home in plain clothes because they don't want anybody know that they're a licensing officer. To me, if this continues, because you are an oppressor. It's like if someone was a colonial officer back in the slavery days. Nah, you don't get respect when you change your clothes and then come back to line with us. No. There isn't respect here for that. You're an oppressor. The government focus too much on ticketing offense than serious crimes, yes. Like, for me, Dream Chaser, and I've said this before, I would be okay with enforcing no road traffic laws in a country where there are 600 murders. Like, in a country where there are 600 murders, I think we have more important things to do than worry about people's smooth tires and cracked windscreens, and if they have a shading baby in the backseat and a bubble on their tint. I think we have more serious issues to look at. Forget all the, and some people might think that's ridiculous. What are you talking? All. Allow the road to be lawless. And the thing is, the road wouldn't actually be lawless, You know that, right? Because in 2010, there was barely any enforcement, and the roads, people were able to go from one point to the next. So here's what: take away all the traffic police. Put everybody on homicide duty. Homicide and gang duty for everybody. Licensing officers, forget your job. You and all go on homicide and gang duty. And when we get the homicides down, then let's go back to the roads. But that's not how our higher ups see it. Like, this is what people call anarcho-tyranny. I made a video about that a couple months ago. What we are experiencing here is what people call anarcho-tyranny, where you are facing anarchy on one side, but yet you are facing tyranny on the next. Okay, so anarchy is where there's no order. There's no order in the criminal side, where the criminals seem like they're doing what they want. But then the tyranny is the side where there's like an over excess of order. So criminals are doing what they want and robbing you blind day in, day out. But God forbid you jump in your car and the tires are a little smooth. That's anarcho-tyranny. That's designed to squeeze out the middle class. Because the anarchy is stripping you from one side and the tyranny is squeezing you from the other. So it's like you have a fan, a sharp fan blade that's slicing off pieces from the bottom, and then you have a press on the top squeezing down. And this is the middle class in the middle. The anarchy from the bottom is slicing them up below, and the tyranny from the top is squeezing them down. And they're just in the middle there, shrinking. And we have the geniuses all about, just obey the law, while the tyranny squeezes them and causes them to disappear. And it's the middle class, it's not the poorest class, because the poorest class don't own vehicles. One of the things that's really annoying to me are the travelers that talk about obeying the law. Sir, you're traveling. You don't know the car laws. You don't know that you could get a vehicle out of the showroom, and while you're driving it, round the corner, you could bounce up a roadblock, and a police or licensing officer could give you a ticket. You just got it out of the showroom. I'm sure something is ticketable on it. But obey the laws. The law is the law. Quite ridiculous to me personally. Anybody who says the statement, the law is the law, ignore them. Let me don't say anything worse than that. Ignore them. They have no idea what they're talking about. The law isn't the law. The law isn't the law. That's not how it works. We're just following it blindly, and what they say goes. I hope not. Let's see. Do we have more stories to jump in there? Of course we do. Hey! Judge Dredd, I didn't break the law, I am the law, Dane Khan says. Isn't the law supposed to be made or written to the culture of the land? Yes. Yes, Dane Khan. And I've said this multiple times. If you write a law that makes the majority of your population into criminals, you have written a bad law. That's how it goes. If you have written a law that makes the majority of your citizens criminals, you have written a bad law. The reason that the people who write the laws are supposed to be representatives taken from all around the country is because the law is supposed to be representative of the morality, the view, the norms of the general public. So if you are going in there and ignoring the general public and writing things just off of whim and fancy and a nice law you saw in another country, then you are not doing your job. You are doing an injustice to the people of this country. Like, imagine if you were the prime minister of a country where there are animal-drawn carts still on the road. There are bicycle carts, there are donkey carts still on the road. And you want to demand of the road traffic laws that all vehicles on the road must be powered. No animal-drawn vehicles must be on the road. We cannot take the filth that it brings. And 50% of the people in your country are donkey cart riders. What will you be doing to your country if you do something like that? Of course, the law is supposed to be framed with the culture of the country in mind. What do you think about Farley wanting to get foreign airlines in Tobago? If he can get them, more power to them. If there's the demand, I'd love that. Somebody made that point. The demeriting system with the ticket is double punishment. You're double punishing people for something. Like, okay, if you demerit my points, then I shouldn't have to pay the ticket. And if I pay the ticket, then there shouldn't be any demerit points. How are they both? Of course it isn't Dream Chaser. It really is not. Like I made the example of the seatbelt laws, and I when I made that video, I see many people who didn't understand at all. Like that seatbelt video, I don't know how many of you saw the seatbelt video that I made. That seatbelt video, I consider that to be an IQ test. I'm dead serious. I consider my seatbelt video. Y'all could go back through the profile, see if y'all see the seatbelt video, and send it to someone and use it as an IQ test. See if they could understand the point being made. If they're struggling, well, you know where to place them a bit. Terry Hines question: does a warden officer or police not supposed to be a certain distance from a corner? You mean parked? Yes. I suppose if they're parked, they're supposed to follow those laws too. But yeah, the seatbelt video was pointing out that this is about self-harm, really and truly. And creating laws about self-harm is a ticklish thing to get into. But even when it goes down to something like when you look at the child caring laws, where the child in the car seat laws, where if you have a child, they must be in a car seat, and this age must be in this, and this age must be. Like, why is that a law? Do you think parents in a car want their child to be hurt? Dream Chaser says this might come off weird, but in all honesty, I'm scared to drive my cars. I've been parked up 2 days now. Sir, that ain't come off weird at all. Because I am telling you, when I see a roadblock, I try as much as I could to avoid it. I go back roads, all sorts. I'm just not looking to find out if some officer is having a bad day. Like $1,500, $1,000 is not chicken feed money. Well, actually, it might literally be my chicken feed money. Slap sneak. But that's not money I just want to be giving up to the government. So, I don't blame you. I'm going to jump into a story here just to keep a trend going. For those of you who how many of you were here last night? Was it last night when I read the story of a man who was robbed while urinating at the side of the road? And a Rima man was robbed while urinating at the side of the road somewhere in Carney there. And after he was robbed of his car was found in East Port of Spain. And I was making the point about that usual suspect thing. The way that there's an obvious geographic bend to our criminal activity in Trinidad and Tobago, and I'm waiting to see our law enforcement do something beside roadblocks that seems a bit more targeted. Let's look at this. Off-duty officer robbed of gun, car. The 30 An off-duty police officer was robbed of his weapon in St. Augustine on Wednesday night. The 38-year-old officer told police he was driving on Warner Street when about 10:30 p.m. two vehicles drove in front of him, blocking the roadway. Two men left the cars, one with a gun. Before the officer could reach for his licensed weapon, the suspects had already walked up to his window and ordered him out of his Toyota Aqua sedan. The men searched him and stole his 9mm pistol that was loaded with 16 rounds of ammunition. They also stole the officer's cash and cell phone and ordered him to lie on the ground. One man then entered the Aqua and drove off. The other two vehicles followed. The officer raised an alarm and officers of the St. Joseph police station responded. About 2 hours later, the Aqua was recovered by officers of the task force on Robertson Street off Parsley Street, Laventille. Again, east of Port of Spain. Now, in that story, personally, I mean, it is possible, but I kind of wonder about your reaction time, because I feel like two vehicles pulling in front of you, men jumping out, I feel like you should have enough time. My feeling. But I mean, I am not in that situation, and you know, not everybody is John Wick out there. Sometimes you could be assuming things based on movies, and that's not real life. But either way, again, a car stolen, and I'm not picking and choosing these stories, you know. Like, as often as you could read it in the news, a car stolen, if it's recovered, where is it recovered? East Port of Spain. Guard robbed of cash, KFC, after going on date in Morva. A security guard who went to meet a 21-year-old woman for a date in Morva was instead robbed of cash, valuables, and a bucket of KFC while in the area. Police said the 40-year-old San Juan man made arrangements to meet the woman at Kertrace, Morva around 9 p.m. on Tuesday. He was reportedly introduced to her about 3 months ago by one of his co-workers. The two allegedly met on 3 occasions along the priority bus route, where he reportedly gave the woman money on each occasion to help her with rent and other expenses. Brother man? Mr. Security Guard? Security Guard, sir? Sir? You start off bad. A 40-year-old security guard introduced a 21-year-old woman. And the 3 times you meet her, first, is just on the bus route to hand over cash. But apparently he thought that the 4th time was, the get through. 4th time she invited me home, boy. The victim told police, the two allegedly met, right? The victim told police he went to the woman's home after she told him she wanted to introduce him to her parents. Come and meet daddy and mommy. Arriving via taxi at Kertrace, where he was met by the woman, the victim was instructed to walk up a nearby hill and then further north to a track. After voicing concerns, when the woman told him to walk in front of her, the victim was confronted by 2 men. So, he started to smell the rat, but he smelled the rat a little too late. He started to figure, okay. But babes, how come you keep telling me walk in front so? Why don't you lead the way? Babes, and you know where we going? You go on now, I will follow you. And she keeps telling him, no, darling, you walk. All right, turn right. Keep walking. A little further ahead. One man grabbed the victim's right hand and the second man held on to the back of his neck and pushed his head down. He was forced to sit on the ground in the dark and ordered to hand over his wallet, which contained $1,650 in cash, bank and identification cards, and a DL Pro Plus cell phone valued at $740. In addition, the men took the bucket of KFC, which was valued at $140. The victim was ordered to walk west out the track as the suspects headed east. The victim was assisted by a passing motorist who took him to the Morva police station, following which officers returned to the address but were unable to locate the suspects. PC Mohan of the cybercrime unit was contacted and was only able to identify the general area of Never Dirty Morva as the phone was switched off. That's correct, Darren. That's correct. Brothers, as I keep telling people, just like the teacher who went looking for gay love out there in East Port of Spain, the guys who go looking to sell phones and sell cars, Grand Rising Tubal, fellas, there's nothing for you up in the hills. But like, I could understand Paul Duncan ask if it still have these men out there. I understand how that happens. Like, look at the facts of the case. This man is a 40-year-old security guard. You know, this isn't exactly someone who is in the real high-value man position in life. He isn't exactly in the highest value man position in life. He was introduced by somebody else. Like, generally speaking, a 40-year-old man who is introduced by somebody else to a woman seems to be a man who might not be, you know, on the cutting edge of having game out there. The first 3 meetings was to help her pay bills. So the man may not have been a man very wise to the happenings. Correct, Dane, he never saw a house. Paul, you know, he had a wrong number that he can't get back in contact with. You heard of the story about the guard charged with murder after shooting a guy that seemed to be self-defense? No. I don't know that story. But I have no idea what you're talking about, yes, sir. Alright, people. That's all I have for now. Are there any further questions or comments on the inside before we dive out? Kerry Trim says, me, I afraid tongue gal. Probably with good reason, sir. Probably with good reason. As per usual, people, I don't always say it, but this is brought to you by Mindful Education, the educational institution that I run. We offer learning pods, which are small homeschool geared, homeschool style classes where you could have full-time homeschool students. We do have those full-time homeschool students if you are looking for that service, or you could just join a student who is already in secondary school out there and you're trying to get some additional classes for them. You're trying to ask the question, Orlando. You're trying to get them into that atmosphere more. Be sure to contact us and get them into one of those classes. We have learning stages from preschool all the way up to CXC offered for those learning pods. We also offer one-on-one individual private tutoring. That's we send a tutor out to you wherever you are, or one-on-one if you want to come to our location, and that tutor spends the entire session with you, making sure that you get what you are trying to get. If you need that particular attention on any one subject, get in contact with us and we will send that tutor. Did you hear about the update on Samsung A23 that crashed all those devices? Nope. I'm not a Samsung user actually, so I didn't hear about that. Paul Duncan says, as Trini Hotep always says, be mindful, not mindless. Orlando says, I passed economics. Good night. I'm glad you did. Do you know about AI? Yes, I do. Alright, people, I will see you guys for the next Mindful Live, which is going to be Monday night around that 9:30 p.m. time. Until then, people, hold it down. Stay safe. Stay well. Probably stay inside. Outside, little sketchy. I always telling you all that. Outside there, sketchy. Watch it outside there. Watch it. Alright, people, I'm out. Later. Stay good. Peace. I hope you're educated, informed, or entertained. This has been the Mindful.